Hello, and thanks again for joining us for Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather on the second day of September 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. And first graphic up, again, hazardous weather graphic, nothing illuminated, meaning no watches, advisories, or warnings out. Public anyway, for anywhere around the state for the next couple of days and likely beyond. No big storms seen on the horizon, at least for the next 2 to 5 days anyway. Eventually, there will be, but not for the next couple of days. Otherwise, we had front move inland here, as you can see, bringing clouds all the way up to the eastern Brooks Range, Arctic Village, kind of on the edge of the high and middle level clouds. And that pushing into the Yukon, clearing behind the front, allowed temperatures to rise to close to 70 in the upper Yukon Valley area, and also on the lee side of the Alaska Range. Temperatures well into the 60s this afternoon. Eastern Copper River Basin pushing up near 70 as well, with sunshine in the mild southerly flow and the downsloping off the terrain. Otherwise, a front dragging through the panhandle there brought rain across much of the area. Heaviest in the north, Juneau picking up nearly an inch in a 12-hour period, ending at about 2 or 3 in the afternoon today. And Yakutat, a little more, inch and a quarter. Otherwise, Cake had about half an inch of rain and lightens up as you head south there to Ketchikan, only picking up about a quarter of an inch of precipitation. And pretty gusty winds in some areas. Gulkana seeing gusts out of the south to 25 miles an hour. They had about 0.15 of an inch of precipitation when the main front went through. And Delta Junction, though, 35 miles an hour out of the south and southeast for that direction. And down farther to the south, Whittier, and over to Portage Glacier there near the Portage Visitor Center where the observing site is. 40-45 mile an hour wind gusts extending Turnagain Arm as well. They're starting to come down now, but rain into the southwest part of the state, not too heavy. Some rain got north of the Alaska Range. Again, with the main front, Chicken, for example, picked up about 1/10 of an inch of precipitation. And gusty winds along the Arctic coast, north slope, 30-35 miles an hour out of the east and northeast, and even stronger through the passes of the Brooks Range. Seeing northeast winds there, gusting 40-45 miles an hour, again through the passes there in the higher elevations. So pretty brisk conditions there for the winds, mostly out of the north and northeast for the Brooks Range and east to east-northeast for the north slope and Arctic coast. And those turn northerly and diminish somewhat through the northern Bering Sea. As you can see, another surge of clouds coming out of the Russian Far East are trying to push in. Will kind of get caught up in that northerly flow and drop off to the south and then eventually swing southeastward. But today on the chart, you can see the front coming up to the North Gulf Coast. That brought storm force wind gusts there to just near the entrance of Prince William Sound overnight last night. It had a peak wind gust 58 miles per hour, which is a 50-knot wind gust. So we're minimal storms along that front in advance of it as it moved in. Weakened now, winds coming down, and rain across southern Alaska into Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island drying out, but some lingering showers. Looking for light winds there for the next couple of days, but maybe some clearing, but stays unsettled. Alaska Peninsula, or it was today anyway, and it'll stay that way for the next couple of days as a general area of low pressure persists along the western part of the state, both at the surface and aloft. And forecast for tonight, kind of another front develops there and lifts northward. Won't be as strong. You can see the gradient not nearly as tight as its predecessor, which later tonight weakens and swings up, continues to push northward there. Heaviest precipitation amounts will be on the southern slopes of the eastern Brooks Range, and they shouldn't be all that heavy at that, but look for periods of rain there along that trough axis back into the main low center, which is near the Lotto Hills there, centered almost over Unalakleet, maybe St. Michael, but that's going to keep it kind of cloudy and wet for the southwest interior. A little more showery for Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. Surges of moisture, periods of light rain, fog, and drizzle for the Pribilof Islands. Wind's not much of a factor at all out there. Kind of light north to northwest, especially over the eastern Aleutians. And could be a dry night for Adak and Atka, but back in probably a better chance of showers to the far western Aleutians. And for tomorrow, winds should come down. Still pretty brisk there on the Arctic coast. We've got small craft advisories out for tomorrow for the entire marine coastline up there. And 30 knots on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast and 30 knots on the west side as well. But should be dry, just grazing shower possible for the central Arctic coast there, maybe. But dry north slope and eastern interior, more clouds, scattered showers, better chance for rain there in the middle Yukon River Valley down into the Kuskokwim Valley. And the Susitna Valley, rain, cloudy skies, showery conditions, all of southern Alaska, North Gulf Coast, trough into the Panhandle, periods of light rain, cloudy skies there. And out west again, unsettled, southeast Bering Sea, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and general northerly flow coming over that ridge off to the southwest there. Brings a couple of weak troughs down, keeping it kind of showery for the central and western Aleutians. Otherwise, not much in the way of clearing. Could be some clearing over the upper Yukon Valley there, maybe even the north side of the Alaska Range, but there isn't any really downsloping to help that along. And it'll still be breezy with east to northeast winds for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but those winds will be coming down, probably especially on the eastern Arctic coast, down to probably under small craft advisory levels, and staying small crafts, I believe, on the western Arctic coast. And for the first day of the weekend, low off the western Arctic coast keeps it cloudy with a chance of rain for the central and western coast, western north slope, and trough axis actually signifying the upper trough aloft there through the western interior. So there and to the east, where all the lift is, that's where the rainfall and showers will be, and cloudy skies. Again, from Kodiak Island, Kenai Peninsula, actually on the North Gulf Coast northward there to the western central Arctic coast. Could be some sunshine. Yukon Flats continued dry there. Eastern Brooks Range, the eastern Arctic coast, but low clouds and fog there for Barter Island, maybe Prudhoe Bay. Otherwise, showers, scattered showers, northern and southeast coast, periods of light rain down to the south with that weak low tracking eastward across the Queen Charlottes. Chance of showers for Kodiak Island, winds light. Definitely light winds there for Kodiak Island, and not too bad for southern Alaska as well, with, again, unsettled conditions. Troughs continue to drop southeastward there, coming over the top of that ridge that's centered south of the western Aleutians. A little bit stronger front now pushing out of the Russian Far East, bringing a chance of moisture to the Bering Strait, maybe the western Seward Peninsula, probably holding off until Saturday night, especially for St. Lawrence Island. And for the lows tonight, lower to mid-50s, say for the Panhandle. Upper 40s to near 50, southern Alaska. Anchorage, though, low 53 in the forecast, about the same for Kodiak. And upper 40s for the Kuskokwim Valley, 48 to 51 for Bristol Bay. Highs in these areas for Friday afternoon. Lower to mid-60s, Copper River Basin. And lower 60s, Kenai Peninsula, Susitna, Manuska Valley area, or call it 60 to 65. Upper 50s there along the coast, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, Yakutat, 58 to 63 for the Panhandle, near 60 Kodiak Island, upper 50s Bristol Bay, upper 50s, lower 60s for the Kuskokwim Valley. And that'll be followed by lows in the upper 40s there for the Kuskokwim Valley, as well as Manuska, Susitna Valley. Again, Anchorage looking at low Saturday morning, the lower 50s, so definitely no frost in sight, with lower 50s for the Kenai Peninsula. Soldotna maybe down to 49, upper 40s for Bristol Bay, lower 50s Kodiak Island. Even the Copper River Basin, not enough clearing to drop the temperatures much there, keeping them for the lows in the upper 40s or mid to upper 40s, and the same lower 50s there for the Panhandle. And looking at the highs for Saturday afternoon, 60 to 65, Susitna, Manuska Valley, Copper River Basin, and lower 60s possible for the Kenai Peninsula. And the Panhandle, 58 to 62 again for your highs, lower 60s Bristol Bay, upper 50s Kodiak Island, upper 50s to maybe lower 60s for the Kuskokwim Valley, and moving up to the north, 30s for the lows for the Arctic Coast North Slope into the Brooks Range, but south of the mountains, upper 40s into the interior to lower 50s there for the lower Yukon River Valley area, lower 40s for the Bering Strait, and in the 40s for the Seward Peninsula. Highs Friday afternoon, 65 to 71 for the eastern interior areas from the Mid-Tanana Valley around the greater Fairbanks area eastward. A little cooler for the Yukon Flats tomorrow, and 40s for the highs for the Arctic coast, 50s to near 60 maybe for the Brooks Range. Otherwise, mid-40s for the Bering Strait. Low Saturday morning, back to the 30s, or 30 to 35, or actually 30 to 40 for the Arctic coast North Slope. Lower 40s, Brooks Range. And mid to upper 40s for the central interior, back down to 40 to 45 degree range for the Seward Peninsula and the Bering Strait coast, St. Lawrence Island. Highs Saturday afternoon, lower 40s to near 50, getting kind of mild there for the Arctic coast. Even the North Slope, or highs into the 50s there for the North Slope, and upper 50s to lower 60s for the interior, warmest Fairbanks area eastward. And for the southwest, lows tonight, upper 40s to lower 50s about sums it up, followed by highs in the mid-50s to mid-upper 50s over the inland areas of the southwest. Lows the following morning, Saturday morning, 48 to 51, say for the Aleutians Bering Sea, a little chillier up towards St. Lawrence Island, near 50 for the southwest interior, and 50s and 60s inland Saturday afternoon.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather. IFR Central Eastern Arctic Coast, marginal VFR for the North Slope, southward across the Brooks Range into the Yukon Flats, and then all the way down the Yukon River there, and then eventually the Kuskokwim River, becomes IFR out toward the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, all the way westward to the Pribilof Islands and the north shores of the Fox Islands and Alaska Peninsula. Northern Kodiak Island, IFR right up into northern Cook Inlet, and then the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range with some marginal VFR farther to the north, but a band of IFR all across the Kenai Peninsula and North Gulf Coast, solid IFR for the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, IFR, southern slopes of the central Brooks Range and down across the Kobuk Valley and northern Koyukuk to the Kobuk Valley and then southward there, again right along the lower Yukon River Valley and along the Kuskokwim Mountains to Kuskokwim Bay. Pribilof's IFR, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and about west of Adak there to about Kiska Island, some IFR, and IFR, Shelikof Strait, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, North Gulf Coast, and the Panhandle. There's some marginal VFR showing up there along the central and south coast, trying to push inland. And for Saturday morning, more IFR shows up along the Panhandle late in the day, and IFR, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, maybe Resurrection Bay, possibly Kamishak Bay, definitely Kachemak Bay, or definitely Kamishak Bay, possibly Kachemak Bay, Fognak Island, and the narrow band of IFR there from Unalaska Island up across Kuskokwim Bay, northward to the northwest interior, and most of the Arctic coast, and more IFR, another batch coming into the far western Aleutians. And for the afternoon, that doesn't really amount to much. This kind of slides off eastward there and diminishes for Atka, not quite making it to Nikolsky. Some IFR, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, and still a band there, Kuskokwim Valley, and then up across the Yukon River, Kobuk Valley, and much of the Arctic coast. But VFR there, north of the Alaska Range, central upper Tanana Valley, northward across Yukon Flats to Arctic Village, and possibly the eastern North Slope. IFR right along the coast of the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast to the Barren Islands. Passes Anatuvik, both Anatuvik and Adigan. Marginal VFR to start becomes VFR during the afternoon, and so a little bit improvement there. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR for the lowest conditions, again, eastern entrance, possibly IFR at times throughout the entire day. Same thing for Rainy, marginal VFR, IFR occasionally on the eastern entrance. Windy, VFR, possible marginal VFR at times, southern approach. Same thing for Isabel. And for Mentasta, looks like it'll be a VFR day through that pass, both entrances. And Tanita, occasionally marginal or mostly marginal VFR in the forecast. Portage, IFR, eastern approach, otherwise marginal, although it could be IFR both sides. And for Chilkoot and White, excuse me, a pretty good chance of IFR flying. Freezing levels 8 to 10,000 feet North Gulf Coast and across the Panhandle, and 4 to 6,000 feet. Warmer air pushing up to the Arctic coast there, and then about 6,000 over the western interior down to the Alaska Peninsula. 8,000 feet over the south central Bering Sea, western Aleutians. Icing, look for, could be still some considerable moderate rime icing for the eastern North Gulf Coast, especially in the northern Panhandle, and possibly a little bit there along the lower Yukon River Valley area. Otherwise, just isolated moderate there over the western interior, pushing into the central interior down to Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula. Eastern Aleutians, still kind of an elevated potential for icing in those areas. And for the jet stream, pretty much upper level low pressure across interior Alaska down to the Alaska Peninsula, and south-southwest 30 to 45 knots there through the Bering Strait to just off the western Arctic coast, up to 60 knots from the southwest into the northern Panhandle, about 50 to 55 southern Bering Sea. 9,000 feet, 20-30 knot winds coming around high pressure there north of Atka Island. And otherwise pretty weak flow over the interior, maybe southwest 25 eastern Brooks Range, 20 knots, mostly the strongest winds south or east of the Panhandle. 3,000 feet, northerlies 20 to 25 knots, eastern Bering Sea. Turbulence, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, possibly moderate chop for the eastern Arctic coast.
Hola Planeteers, Trace here to help you spot the plethora of planets above our pates. Right now, you can see Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. Grab some food and nerd friends and hit the skies around sunset and look west. If you're lucky, you'll see tiny Mercury chasing the sun below the horizon. Behind that is bright Venus. As Venus dips below the horizon too, look for Jupiter and Saturn up in the southeast around 9:30. 4 planets, one night. All the planets' names are of Roman gods. Mercury, the speedy messenger, Saturn, the god of agriculture, Venus, the goddess of beauty and love, and giant Jupiter, named for the king of the gods. In ancient times, some skywatchers believed that these planets were the gods, sending us messages through their confusing movements and colors. Today we know that these lights are balls of gas, rock, and dust, spinning through space. Which is more romantic? You tell me while we both keep looking up.
The beluga whale, also known as the white whale, lives in large groups and are unusual among whales. They have no dorsal fin, large bulbous heads, and they can actually swim backwards. To feed, they produce sound to find and hunt fish and invertebrates, and they use sound to communicate.
They're also known as the canaries of the sea because they make such a diversity of noises. They make chirps and whistles and gurgles and trumpeting sounds. They just make all kinds of sounds.
In the U.S., beluga whales live in the cold waters of Alaska, and there are 5 separate populations. Of those 5, the Cook Inlet population is the smallest, and has declined by about 75%. Subsistence hunting may have contributed to this initial population drop, but this practice was regulated starting in 1999, with the last hunt in 2005. Still, the beluga population here has yet to recover.
We listed Cook Inlet beluga whales as an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act in 2008, and we had hoped that the population would start recovering, but we are still seeing a continued decline. And these beluga whales are only found in Cook Inlet, and so if they go extinct, we don't think any other belugas will come back and populate this area.
These whales spend most of their summer near Anchorage, Alaska's largest city, where threats to belugas are on the rise as the city grows. These may include diminishing food, habitat loss or destruction, pollution, toxins, and human-caused noise which hampers their ability to feed and communicate. Researchers are trying to understand which of these threats may be impacting them most, but Cook Inlet is a tough place to work.
It's really hostile for research. We have the strong tides, which makes it challenging for human safety, and we can't see through the water. It is very muddy, so we're pretty much limited to the part of the animal that breaks the surface of the water. And as a result, we have limited information about the specific population dynamics of Cook Inlet beluga whales.
Up until recently, information has mainly come from annual aerial surveys from aircraft, and boat or shore-based photo identification surveys that use unique markings to tell animals apart. Scientists also use passive acoustics to listen for belugas, but none of these methods can detect much information about their health.
So it's really been a game changer with the whole species in the spotlight designation. We've gotten more resources within our agency.
For instance, we're able to use a drone to collect some aerial imagery of belugas in the wild, and we're hoping to learn some information about the age classes, information about the health status.
And probably the most important bit of information that we'll get out of that is we'll be able to identify the new calves. And we're hoping if we keep doing this every year, we'll be able to get an estimate of calf production every year that will tell us something about how well the population's doing.
We are also expanding upon our biopsy studies, hopefully to give us some information about sex, the individual's reproductive status, some genetic information, some contaminant loads.
Public and private partners are contributing as well. Some are looking at toxin levels in the whale's prey, while others are analyzing beluga teeth to learn about their age and past diet. Others monitor water quality and how belugas react to boats, and more check to see if their behavior changes with increased background noise. All of these findings will go toward developing effective recovery strategies for this population.
As for what you can do, if you're out boating, give belugas space. Don't drive right up next to them. Stay about 100 yards away. If you're flying over them, just remember that you're putting noise into the water as well, and so stay at least 1,500 feet above them. Report a stranded beluga whale as soon as possible, and that's if they're dead stranded or live stranded. The amount of information that we can learn from these animals by responding to a stranding is monumental, and it will help our efforts to recover them.
Together we can help beluga whales thrive in the dynamic waters of Cook Inlet. With continued research and good stewardship, we hope to see this population grow in the years to come.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis still showing a little small area of icing close to the western Arctic coast there, west of Point Barrow, and then the area that's still along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and the heavier ice pack back to the north there, kind of fragmented a little bit, especially north of the central coast. And moving on to coastal water forecasts, we've got for the Panhandle, pretty light winds on the south coast, south to southwest, 10 to 15 knots tomorrow, 6 to 8 foot seas. Southeasterlies, 15 knots for the north coast, and for the Clarence Strait area, south winds 15 knots. Otherwise, southeast 15 to 20 knots for the central and northern inner waters. And for the first day of the weekend, pretty light winds, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, even into Stevens Passage, variable, light and variable, 5 to 10 knots, but small craft advisories. Quite a difference when you get down to Dixon Entrance there, southeast at 25 knots, and 30 knot winds from varying directions there for the south coast with seas 8 to 9 feet, and north-northwesterly breeze at 15 to 20 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas for the north coast. And for Prince William Sound, east winds at 10 knots with 2 foot seas. Otherwise, we've got light variable winds in the forecast for the North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands. And seas are about 5 feet, east winds 15 for Kamishak Bay, and Cook Inlet looking at a light northeast breeze at 10 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas. Outlook for Saturday, Cook Inlet, west-northwest at 10, seas still pretty slight at 2 feet, Kamishak Bay west at 15, variable winds at 10 knots for the Barren Islands. And for the North Gulf Coast, east to northeasterlies at 15 knots with 4 foot seas, Prince William Sound, northerlies at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. Kodiak Island tomorrow, variable winds at 10 knots with 2 to 5 foot seas. Otherwise, the Alaska Peninsula, westerlies at 15 and southwest 10 for Bristol Bay. Those will pick up to 20 knots from the northwest for Bristol Bay and extend right on down the coastline to Cape Sarachev. And also on the south coast of the peninsula, northwesterlies at 20 knots, but from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, northwest 15. And still light variable winds first day of the weekend around Kodiak Island with 2 to 4 foot seas. And for Unalaska Island, west-northwest at 20 knots. Same forecast for Unmak Island, Adak and Atka, west-northwest at 15 knots. And then northwest 20-knot winds west of Adak all the way to Shimia. And for the day on Saturday, northwest 15 to 20 knots for the western Aleutians, central areas, Adak to Atka, northwesterly sustained 20 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas, and 15 to 20 knot winds for the Fox Islands from the west and northwest, strongest across on Alaska Island with 5 to 6 foot seas. And the southwest coast, well as all of the Bering Sea, northern Bering Sea, Pribilof, southwest coast, St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, all out of the northwest. Norton Sound being the lightest at 10 knots, but the rest of the area, they're pretty uniform with a 20 knot wind speed. And for Saturday, Norton Sound, northwest 15 knots, otherwise northwest 20 knot winds continue St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta coast, west 20, south of Nunivak Island, and west 15 for St. Matthew Island, while the Pribilof's looking at a northwest breeze at 15 knots with 4 foot seas. Pretty brisk winds there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow. East 30 knots sustained with seas up to 8 feet and 25 knot winds for the central coast with small craft advisories all the way down to Cape Thompson for 25 to 30 knot easterly winds, 20 knots out of the northwest from Cape Thompson to Wales. And for Saturday, winds coming down there, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but kind of holding steady on the central coast, 25 knots there for small craft advisories, but coming down to 20 knots there toward Demarcation Point. Western Arctic coast, northwest 15, and then northwest 20 from Cape Beaufort to Wales with 4 to 5 foot seas. For tonight, still breezy and windy across the North Slope and Arctic coast, but winds coming down through the passes of the Brooks Range, and pretty light winds over all of the interior on down to Kodiak Island with rain, possibly moderate, North Gulf Coast, maybe the Panhandle tonight, and showers and widespread clouds, fog and drizzle for the southeast and eastern Bering Sea to the Alaska Peninsula and Fox Islands. That pretty much continues tomorrow under a general trough of low pressure both at the surface and aloft. And more clouds, better chance of rain central interior, but pretty dry up to the northeast there in the North Slope and Arctic coast, and periods of rain for the Panhandle. First day of the weekend. Looking a little drier for the southeast coast, especially in the north, but not much.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.